Chaos Rising pre-releases begin on Saturday, May 9th, giving you a chance to play the new set 2 weeks ahead of time. If you've never been to a pre-release before, you get a build and battle kit for around $25 to $30, which includes one of 4 pre-constructed 40-card decks at random plus 4 packs of Chaos Rising. You then use the kit and packs to build a 40-card deck. What's different in a pre-release aside from the 40-card decks is that you also have 4 prizes instead of the typical 6. And where you're normally limited to 4 copies of every card, if you end up pulling a 5th, 6th, or 7th copy of a card, you can play them all. If you missed my short ranking them, the 4 possible promos you'll receive in the Chaos Rising Build and Battle Kit are Delphox, Crobat, Ampharos, and Goodra. All of them are stage 2s, which means things might be a little slower as you have to wait at least a turn to evolve into them. Before I get to the pre-constructed decks and how to upgrade them, we need to talk about Special Red Card. This is by far the best card anyone can get from a Chaos Rising pack and makes pre-releases far too unbalanced. When your opponent has 3 or fewer prizes remaining, you can play this item that forces them to shuffle draw 3. Remember that pre-releases start at 4 prizes, so as soon as they take a single prize, you can stick them with a 3-card hand. Yeah, this thing is absolutely broken. If you do open a copy of Special Red Card in one of your packs, immediately add it to your deck. Anyone who runs this will have an immediate advantage over someone who doesn't. If you open a second copy, add that as well. Anything beyond 2 copies seems a little unnecessary, but if you want people to hate you, add more if you get them. I should also mention Lily's determination. In a pre-release, you completely ignore the second sentence. Again, you start at just 4 prizes, so Lily will always be just a shuffle draw 6. Alright, looking at the 4 possible 40-card decks, first up is Delphox. It has 4 Fennekin, 3 Braixen, 3 Delphox, and a 2/2 line of Ninetales. Unfortunately, the energy acceleration is Waitress, and Ninetales is your backup attacker. Before I explain why those 2 cards are disappointing, let me talk about the Delphox line. Fennekin is absolutely amazing. For a single energy, it immediately takes 2 basic Pokemon from your deck and puts them on your bench. Do this twice and all your basics should be on the field. Then you can evolve into Braixen to deal 80 damage, though it does require you to discard an energy, which isn't great. The reason discarding energy is bad is because Delphox does 30 damage times the number of energy attached to all Pokemon. So you count every energy attached to your Pokemon and theirs when calculating the damage for Energized Storm. Delphox's attack does require 2 fire, which is fine because you have 2 copies of Waitress. Play it, look at the top 6 cards of your deck, and if there's an energy there, you can attach it to any one of your Pokemon. Combined with your 1 manual attachment for turn, you can power up a naked Delphox right away. And if you don't have a Waitress in hand currently, Delphox's Flaring Magic ability can help. By discarding a fire energy from hand, you drop to 7 cards. Keep in mind that pre-release decks only have 40 cards. And you lose if your deck runs out of cards and you can't draw at the start of your turn. You do have 1 energy recycler though, which shuffles back in up to 5 energy from the discard pile. So you can be a little destructive early. Now about Ninetales. It's an okay attacker dealing 70 damage for 2 fire. And Vulpix burns their active. If you don't know, burn puts 2 damage counters on them between turns. After placing those damage counters, your opponent flips a coin. If heads, the burn is cured. If tails, they remain burned. Switching or evolving also heals status conditions, but I want to talk about Ninetales as attacked, which is blocked by the new Patrat. So if the rat is in play, Ninetales Reflect does nothing. In terms of which cards you want to add to your Delphox deck from your 4 packs, easily the best is Delibird. This is a high-risk, high-reward card that could set you up for victory almost immediately. For a single energy, Delibird allows each player to attach up to 3 energy cards from their hand however they want. You can use Fennekin early to easily get Delibird into play. Then let's say they took a knockout and you red carded them down to 3. Well, the odds they have energy is low. Meanwhile, you can basically set up Delphox to sweep the rest of the game. And don't forget that Delibird is a water type, so Flap can one-shot a Fennekin through weakness. You should also be on the lookout for Tauros, but only if you manage to get 2 or 3 copies, which is unlikely. Additionally, 1 copy of Nitro Fire Energy is okay, since Braixen does require you to discard an energy. By discarding Nitro Fire, it goes back into your hand instead of the discard pile. And finally, AZ's Tranquility is a switch card, which will be useful against Crobat's Confusion, though the 1 switch and 1 Surfer in the pre-made deck should be enough to carry you through. Speaking of Crobat, the pre-made deck seems really strong early, but might struggle late. And Grimsley's move could be the secret sauce that turns out to just be mayo mixed with ketchup. First though, Quillfish seems like it'll be the MVP. If they hit into you, their active gets poisoned by its ability. And if they are poisoned, Quillfish goes from dealing 30 damage to 80 all for 1 energy. What's even better is that you can give Quillfish a Punk Helmet. If they deal damage to Quillfish with it attached, they take 4 damage counters to the face. So if you're facing Qwilfish as a Delphox player, just use Fennekin to bench your basics, not attack, thus avoiding poison. And Vulpix doesn't activate Qwilfish's ability since it's an effective on attack, not damage. The strategy with Crobat is simple. Zubat has free retreat, so even if you start it, you can easily retreat into a Qwilfish who should always be up front early. Then try to evolve into Golbat turn 2, who makes itself immune to damage from basics with its attack. A lot of these battles will involve evolutions though, so it might not be super useful. Then you want to get Crobat hopefully into play on your third turn. When it's in the active, you can put any card on top of your deck. That means you can always draw what you need. Plus, Poison Soundwave does 80 damage while also poisoning and confusing. Poison is always 10 damage between turns, and like every status condition is healed by retreating, switching, or evolving. Confusion, meanwhile, requires a coin flip. If their active is confused and they flip heads, everything proceeds as normal. If it's tails, the attack fails and they take 30 damage. So make sure you bring a coin or some dice. And if you're wondering how dice work, evens or heads, odds or tails. Then there's Grimsley's move. Crobat puts any card on top of your deck. Grimsley looks at the top 7 cards of your deck and puts any dark type you find there directly onto your bench, regardless of who it is. Obviously, the combo is putting Crobat up front, placing a Crobat on top, then using Grimsley's. But pre-release decks only have 40 cards in them. So don't be afraid to use Grimsley's whenever, believing in the heart of the cards. Because getting a Crobat into play turn 1 going second off a raw Grimsley is the ultimate Pokeballer move. As for the best pulls from your 4 packs, Roxy's performance is a supporter that doesn't allow their poison Pokemon to retreat. I can recommend 1 copy, because if you use Poison Soundwave, they might be stuck in the active, forced to flip through confusion. Just be aware that every kit includes 2 switch cards, which is bad for Crobat. And because I know 1 out of every 10,000 people will experience this, yes, if you pull the Crobat kit and a copy of Crocodile EX from your packs, you can do the thing. None of Crocodile's pre-evolutions are in Chaos Rising. But if you use Grimsley and Crocodiles in the top 7, congratulations, you just got a super powerful stage 2 Dark type. It's too early to tell if this is Goodra or Badra. What I don't like is the lack of any energy acceleration, especially in a deck that requires 2 different types of energy. So if you're unable to find both a water and psychic for Goodra, you lose. What I like about Goodra is that it deals 160 damage for 2 energy, which one-shots every non-EX Pokemon you're likely to encounter. The downside is that you have to discard the top card of your deck. So my advice is to not be afraid to do nothing until you get a Goodra. I know it seems weird, but you can load up your hand with Pokemon using Pokepads so as not to accidentally discard them. And hitting into a Qwilfish with Goomy is a terrible idea. I'm especially worried about Qwilfish if you use the included Esper and Meowstic. Qwilfish one-shots Esper through weakness. And if Meowstic hits into Qwilfish, not knocking it out, Qwilfish takes a revenge KO next turn. So that matchup will be tough. I'm also not a fan of Emma. If they don't have any Pokemon in hand, she's useless. The one plus is that playing Emma allows Esper to deal 70 damage for 1 Psychic, which knocks out things like Fennekin and Mareep. So if you pull a second Emma from a pack, don't be afraid to add it to the deck. Now, Goodra is in a unique position. While the double energy requirement is tough, it does allow you a wider variety of support Pokemon. So any of the Deoxys become good ideas. One makes itself immune to damage from Pokemon with abilities, which a lot have. Just remember that Crobat can still confuse and poison you. Speed Deoxys deals 30 damage and draws you up to 5, and another does 80 base damage for 3 energy, powering itself up with its first attack. On the water side, Delibird is once again a potential option for energy acceleration. Keldeo can soften some things up early, though that's not entirely necessary when Goodra does 160 damage. And even someone like Octillery can be useful despite confusing itself, just make sure you also have a Remoraid. Finally, we have Ampharos. Like Goodra, this is another situation where not attacking early might be optimal. This deck also requires you to know how to count, but as long as you have at least 4 toes available, it should be doable. First up, there is a major problem. Mareep requires 2 energy to retreat, so if you start it, that's not great. You do have 1 Switch and 1 Surfer, but that might not be enough. You want to hope for an Emolga start at all costs, because Minor Errand running lets you fill up your hand with 2 energy every turn. And while Emolga is hopefully surviving a few hits, you're manually attaching to your sheep. Just don't make the mistake of using Emolga Sky Return at the wrong time, because you have to put it back into your hand. Now, if you do attack with Mareep, you flip a coin. If heads, they're paralyzed. They can't retreat or attack on their turn due to paralysis, but switching or evolving does allow them to recover. If they don't switch or evolve, they remain unable to do anything their whole turn, then it's cured coming into your turn. Then there's Flaffy. Disconnect prevents them from playing items. This isn't amazing because it's only 40 damage, and if you disconnect a Qwilfish, well, Flaffy gets KO'd next turn, but it does stop them from using Switch or Pokepad. Finally, Ampharos. This is the best attacker in the entire pre-release, provided everything goes right. Flashing Bolt does 140 base damage and you can't attack next turn, so saving your switches is helpful. But thanks to Ampharos' ability, if you both have the same number of cards in your feet, it deals 80 extra damage or 220 total, KOing every non-EX. To activate Ampharos' ability, you have a few options. 2 Judge are included in the kit, forcing both players to shuffle draw 4. So as long as you don't play any cards after Judge, you're golden. Additionally, if you pull Special Red card, that can put them down to 3 cards. Then it's up to you to play until you also have 3 left. Something that can help is Ultra Ball, which discards 2 cards from hand to find a Pokemon. Overall, the strategy isn't foolproof, and Ampharos not being able to attack on back-to-back turns is rough, but you can't deny the power. Since there's only these 4 Lightning Pokemon in Chaos Rising, it's slim pickings for additions. A copy of Delibird is always a good idea, just remember that it can also help them. And this could be the one deck where Prism Tower makes sense, since you might need ways to thin your hand. Just be aware that your opponent can also use it, but if you want to activate Synchro Pulse, here you go. And finally, I guess AZ's Tranquility can help you switch into another attacker. Now that we know everything in the kits, I honestly don't know who the strongest is. Delphox needs to hit both Waitresses to get enough energy into play for KOs, or hope for a Delibird in the packs, but it has the best card draw. Crobat will have the fastest start and has the best backup attacker, but has a low damage output. Goodra requires 2 different types of energy, but if you find them, it's GG's. And Ampharos requires counting, but if you can do that, it has the potential to be the best attacker. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this seems like a fairly balanced pre-release, and it's less about which kit you get and more about the cards you draw. Before I go, I need to mention Pokemon EX. Yes, if you pull them from your packs, you can play them. However, if they're evolved like Pyroar and Chinchino, you still have to evolve them from Litleo and Minchino. And someone like Mega Pyroar gives up 3 prizes when KO'd with Chinchino at 2. But they're super strong and worth it. Best of all, Chinchino EX can fit into any pre-release kit, dealing lots of damage and potentially taking none in return if you flip heads. There's also Mega Floette, who you could put into your Goodra deck. Or if you're feeling spicy, take a huge risk and build a Floette deck by itself, adding in some Deoxys if you pull them. Because yes, you can build a deck with 1 Mega Floette and 39 energy if you really wanted to. Just don't be surprised if you mulligan 10 times, giving them 10 free cards. Elsewhere, if you pull Mega Gallade, it's impossible to play since Ralts and Kirlia aren't in the set. And Mega Greninja and Beedrill EX are almost never going to show up as they're Stage 2s, and you'd also have to have the basics and Stage 1s underneath. Unless you really believe in that one copy of Rare Candy, then you can skip the Stage 1. Finally, Mega Dragalogy could be really strong if you also pull a Skrelp, because Pernicious Poison doesn't activate Qwilfish's ability. And 16 damage counters between turns KOs every Stage 2 promo. As a quick refresher, if you pull 1 or 2 copies of Special Red card in your 4 packs, add them to your deck immediately. You will have to remove cards to make room, but that could easily be something like the Ninetales or Meowstic lines. And someone like Delibird is a huge help for Delphox, Goodra, and Ampharos, even if it does potentially help your opponent as well.